Hi everyone, I'm FlagonHG, and this is the video of my attempt at a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Platinum, using only Baby Pokémon. To see what I define as hardcore Nuzlocke rules, check out the description below. But in short, no items in battle, no overleveling past the gym leader's ace, and we're playing on set mode. Babies. Despite 385,000 babies being born each day, and babies making up a non-insignificant portion of the world population, babies don't have jobs, and they don't contribute to the advancement of society. 100% of all babies are illiterate and routinely fail common intelligence tests. Babies are also incredibly physically weak and terrible at hand-to-hand combat. Every time I've been in a fight with a baby, the baby always loses, and it is not even close. By all accounts, babies are useless, stupid, and weak. So you can only imagine how difficult a hardcore Nuzlocke using only baby Pokemon might be. However, despite the incontrovertible proof that babies serve no purpose in modern society, a recent study published in Nature revealed something shocking. 99.5% of all people were at some point in their life a baby. It begs the question why? If babies are so pathetic, why do so many people choose to be babies? In addition to that, these chubby little pants poopers are consistently the center of pop culture. Clearly, babies have an untapped potential, and that is what this challenge is all about. Let's start by defining what is meant by a baby Pokemon. A baby Pokemon is a special classification of Pokemon that is defined as a first stage Pokemon that is obtainable by breeding, but that cannot breed itself. These Pokemon are usually pre-evolutions to Pokemon previously introduced in an earlier generation, but there are a few exceptions. The main takeaway though is that not all first stage Pokemon are considered baby Pokemon. In total, there are 19 baby Pokemon across all 8 generations, though of course Toxel cannot be obtained in Platinum, since it doesn't exist yet, so that leaves 18 bouncing baby Pokemon at my disposal. In a normal playthrough of Platinum though, many of these babies are unavailable until the postgame, so I decided to do something a little different for this challenge. With the help of my Uncle Jim Tendo, I was able to get my hands on a special version of a Platinum DS cartridge that was coded to have 18 eggs in the PC. Each of these 18 eggs corresponded to one of the 18 baby Pokemon in this game. So every time I came across a new area where I would get an encounter via a grass patch in a regular Nuzlocke, I would instead just randomly choose one of the eggs in the PC to hatch. This way, I was able to use all of the baby Pokemon, but there was still a little bit of randomness in what my encounters were. And it also meant I wouldn't have to spend literal days looking for a Munchlax in a honey tree. This setup also made it so that this challenge was still potentially possible even with one final rule. I am not allowed to evolve my baby Pokemon, so I'll be stuck with these toddlers for my entire run. Man, imagine being stuck as a baby. Never getting to grow old, never getting to learn and broaden your horizons, never getting to walk or talk, never getting to experience complex thoughts, never getting to take the next step in your creative journey, never understand— Wait a minute. The next step in your creative journey? Is this a Skillshare app? Skillshare is an online learning community where you can find thousands of classes designed to teach you creative skills, ranging from topics like illustration, graphic design, and video editing. Skillshare has been a repeated sponsor of this channel because I genuinely think that they offer really great classes that will help you take the next step in your creative journey, whatever that may be. If you're looking to start making videos for your own YouTube channel, I think there's no better place to start than Jordy Vanderput's Adobe Premiere Pro for Beginners class. Jordy's class, and all other Skillshare classes, are optimized to put your learning first. There's no commitment or timeline, you can skip individual lessons if you're not interested in them, and all classes are ad-free, because not even babies like ads. If you want to give Skillshare a try, the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description of this video will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare's premium membership, so that you can explore your creativity for free. Thanks so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get into the challenge. My journey begins by selecting my starter. Since I don't want to have the ability to choose which babies I get, I've made it so that my starter is a Macargo, which has replaced Chimchar. After smacking down my rival Old McD and his Piplup, I named this Macargo Mom Cargo. With her Magma Armor ability, she'll be the perfect surrogate mother to help hatch our team of babies. She won't be used in combat though, other than that first rival battle. Based on my rule set, I'm now able to randomly hatch 3 eggs, each corresponding to the encounters from Route 201, Route 202, and Lake Verity. I've decided to only hatch eggs corresponding to routes that have grass patches. Otherwise, I'd also be able to get encounters from Twinleaf Town, Ravaged Path, Orber Mine, and a few other places, resulting in like 10 encounters before the first gym. I decided that it would be more fun to spread out the encounters a little bit. Anyways, our first egg, corresponding to the Lake Verity encounter, hatches into a Mime Jr. I name him Gerber, and as far as babies go, he's not a bad one to start off with. Mime Jr. has relatively solid special attack and a pretty decent move pool. The Route 201 encounter hatches into a Budu, which is a really lucky baby to hatch before the first gym. I name him Groot. Then on Route 202 I hatch a Happiny. Although Chansey and Blissey are both pretty spectacular in Nuzlockes, Happiny is not, mainly because she doesn't learn Soft Boiled. I name her Spice, but she's probably not going to get much action. With my 3 new teammates hatched, Mom Cargo goes in the box, and then we make our way to Jubilife City. But after completing the fever dream that is running through the city and hunting down clowns, we get access to 2 new routes, which means I can hatch 2 new babies. First, on Route 204, I hatch an Elekid, which is easily one of our better available babies. He's actually very fast with 95 base speed, and he has decent attack and special attack for a baby. Welcome to the team, Jack Jack. On Route 203, I catch a Chingling. When he hatches, I say, "This is literally the most useless one." I wish I could go back and slap myself for disrespecting Chingling like that. Boss the Chingling will save this run on many occasions. After this video, like me, you too will become enlightened by Chingling's might. Before continuing, we need to fight Old McD, but he's no match for our babies. He leads Starly and I lead Gerber. Gerber hits a Confusion for over half health, and then Starly goes for a Growl, which Gerber avoids thanks to his soundproof ability. On the next turn, Starly hits a Quick Attack, which crits for a huge chunk of damage since Gerber has atrocious defense. This will be a recurring weakness for many of my babies, but for now it's not a huge issue. Another Confusion finishes off Starly, and then Piplup comes out. So I switch to Groot, who also takes a decent amount of damage from a physical attack pound, but a few absorbs are enough to finish off the Piplup, winning us our first official rival battle. From here, I can get one last encounter before the first gym. On Route 207, I hatch a Tyrogue, which is low-key one of the worst Pokemon ever. I'm not even being hyperbolic. This thing learns nothing by level up, and he has abysmal stats, so he's not going to be that useful. But at least he does know Fake Out. Welcome to the team, Wipes. Now it's time to take on the first gym leader, Rourke. But with Groot, his rock type shouldn't be too difficult. He leads Geodude, and I lead Groot, who's holding a Quick Claw. I start by setting up a Growth as Geodude uses Stealth Rocks. So on the next turn, I go for another Growth as Geodude hits a critical hit Rock Throw. So now I gotta go for a Mega Drain, which knocks it out in one shot, as I gain back most of my health we lost from Geodude's Rock Throw. Onix comes out next, but our Quick Claw activates, letting us outspeed Onix and knock it out with a single Mega Drain. This brings Groot back to full health as Cranidos comes out last. This could still be bad if Cranidos gets a few flinches with Headbutt, but he just goes for Leer. So Groot retaliates with a Mega Drain, knocking out Cranidos and easily winning us our first gym badge. After the battle, Groot evolves into Roselia. Just kidding, he will remain a baby forever. Next, we make our way to Eterna City. I get a few more encounters on the way. First at Valley Windworks, I hatch a Wynut and name her Nut. She might have some niche uses with Counter and Mirror Coat, but it's going to be pretty tough to get her into a position where she's not at risk to getting killed by a critical hit. Before getting any other encounters, we've got the always challenging Mars fight. Purugly is really scary, especially since most of our babies have atrocious physical defense stats. Fortunately, there are very few fights between Mars and Gardenia, so we can get pretty close to the current level cap, giving us a bit of a level advantage here. Mars leads Zubat, and I lead Jack Jack. He immediately just takes out the Zubat with a Shockwave. And then Purugly comes out. But Jack Jack has Low Kick, which will do big damage to the big fat cat. But Purugly crits with a Fake Out, so now Jack Jack will die to another attack if he stays in. So I switch to Wipes, who resists a feint attack on the switch. Then I hit Purugly with my own Fake Out, though it does noticeably less damage than hers. On the next turn, Purugly goes for a Scratch, and then Wipes hits a pretty hard Rock Smash, but Purugly recovers some health with an Oranberry. From here, I switch to Groot, who gets hit by a Scratch. And then Purugly hits Groot with a critical hit Scratch as he retaliates with a weak Mega Drain. This is starting to look a little sweaty. I foolishly didn't fully level up Nut or Spice before this battle. I decide the best course of action is to risk a critical hit here and stay in with Groot. Fortunately, Purugly doesn't crit the next Scratch, so we're able to get off another Mega Drain. Then I switch to Gerber, who tanks a Scratch. Gerber now baits Feint Attack, which gives me a fairly safe switch to Wipes. Then I can fire off another Fake Out for a small chunk of damage. On the next turn, I switch to Nut, who even at level 12 tanks a scratch pretty well. And since Nut now also baits a feint attack, I'm free to switch back into Wipes, letting me get off one more fake out on the next turn, which is just enough to knock out the Purugly. Word of advice, always take the time to train up a full team of 6 before starting a major fight. That was a lot closer than it needed to be. From here, we get a few more encounters on our way to Eterna City. On Route 205, I hatch a Riolu and name him Boomer. Boomer has a few tricks up his sleeve that will make him pretty useful later in the run. In Eterna Forest, I hatch a Mantike, who is probably my personal favorite of the baby Pokemon. Look at how cute she is! She's also going to be our resident Surf and Ice Beam spammer, which will be very useful later on. And then on Route 211, for the final encounter before Gardenia, I hatch a Magby. For the record, Twitch chat is just randomly deciding which egg I hatch, so this is completely random. But very lucky, since Back Ribs will help us torch Gardenia's grass types who are otherwise pretty difficult, especially her Roserade. Gardenia leads Turtwig, so I lead with the newly trained up Back Ribs. A single Ember is enough to one-shot the Turtwig before it can move. Cherrim comes out second, so I just go for another Ember for about half health. Cherrim does set up a Leech Seed though, and gains enough health back that another Ember probably won't kill. So I switch to Groot, who very handily brushes off a Magical Leaf. Then I switch back to Back Ribs. On the next turn, an Ember leaves Cherrim with a Sliver as she just does some damage with Magical Leaf. That ends up being okay though because Gardenia wastes a Super Potion here. 2 more Embers finish off Cherrim. Roserade is last, and because her special defense is so much better than her defense stat, it's actually better to just go for Return here. Back Ribs takes a chunk of health from a Magical Leaf and then hits a huge Return, but a Citrus Berry heals back a good bit of health. On the next turn, I switch to Groot, who shrugs off a Magical Leaf from his big sister. Roserade goes for a Poison Sting, and then Groot hits a Stun Spore. From here, I switch to Gerber to go for the kill with Psybeam, forgetting that Roserade would be likely to go for a Stun Spore of her own. That was dumb, since now Roserade outspeeds and can hit a critical hit Magical Leaf to kill Gerber. So I've just thrown away an easy guaranteed victory. But one brave baby will rise to the occasion and save me from my own stupidity. First, I switch back to Groot on a Magical Leaf. Then I just start chugging away with Mega Drain as Roserade first uses Stun Spore, and then Poison Sting. Roserade of course gets 2 critical hit Poison Stings in a row, so even after an Oran Berry recovery, it isn't long until I'm in range of a critical hit. So I switch to Boss, the hero I need, but certainly not the one I deserve. Roserade gets fully paralyzed on the switch, so on the next turn, Boss hits a Confusion that leaves Roserade with a Sliver. But then Roserade just paralyzes with a Stun Spore, which gets healed by Boss's held Cherry Berry. So, with one more Confusion, Boss lives up to his name and knocks out Roserade, winning us the second gym badge. After this, it's time for the second of the 2 early game Galactic Commander fights. Jupiter leads Zubat, and I lead Gerber. I set up a Reflect, and then tank a Bite that wouldn't have killed me even if it crit. Then I knock out the Zubat with a Confusion. Skunk Tank comes out next. Again, since our babies are very defensively frail, this thing is pretty terrifying. I switch to Wipes, who gets poisoned by a Poison Gas. It would have been nice to have Guts as an ability on Wipes, but unfortunately he has Steadfast instead. So I go for the smallest bit of damage with Fake Out. Then I tank a Night Slash as I fish for a defense drop with Rock Smash, but unfortunately I don't get it. Wipes is probably dead to a critical hit plus poison damage here, but since he's not a very good Pokemon anyways, I make the executive decision that his life is worth risking for some chip damage. Skunk Tank hits a Night Slash, which doesn't crit, and then Wipes hits a Rock Smash, which drops Skunk Tank's defense. So from here, I switch to Boomer, who gets hit by a Night Slash, and then on the next turn, we outspeed the Skunk Tank and kill it with a critical hit Force Palm. Nice! On the way to Hearthome City and the next gym leader, I get 2 more encounters. On Route 206, I hatch a Cleffa and name him Daddy. No Magic Guard makes Daddy significantly less useful, but at least Daddy's cute. Please don't use that sound bit out of context. Then on Route 208, I hatch a Bonsly and name her Yoda. She's easily the most physically defensive baby we'll get, so our team of babies is starting to look relatively versatile. The difficult thing about this challenge is that it gets exponentially harder as we go on. In most Nuzlockes, the mid-game tends to be easier than the beginning of the game, because even though your opponents become stronger, your own Pokemon start to evolve and become significantly stronger themselves. Since my Pokemon are stuck in the state of arrested development, each badge just gets harder and harder and harder, which makes this challenge a ton of fun. This is already one of the most challenging runs to Theorycraft, even if I haven't actually had any deaths. Yet. For that reason though, I decided to do the same thing that I did in my Diamond Fire type only run. Namely, once I get the Explorer kit, which grants me access to the Sinnoh Underground, I give myself infinite money, since you can theoretically farm items in the Underground and sell them to get as much money as you want. This will be important for picking up items and TMs from the game corner and the department store in Veilstone City. I also give myself all the items that you can get from the Sinnoh Underground, which includes all the type boosting plates. And finally, I give myself all the berries that you can farm from the Berry Master on Route 208, since this can be done pretty easily by just repeatedly changing the date on my handy-dandy Nintendo DS. Once I get to Pastoria City, I will also do this for the super effective attack berries that you can get in a similar manner. For me, this just cuts down on the boring skillless parts of the run that I would need to do to play the game optimally. Hopefully that makes sense. I know that this explanation is probably more trouble than it's worth, but I strive to be as transparent as possible to my viewers about what happens during my challenges. Honesty is something that's really important to me, especially in a space where it is very easy to be dishonest without any real consequences. My personal philosophy is that as long as you're honest about what you do during your challenge runs, it doesn't really matter. Anyways, back to the gameplay. Next up is the fight against Fantina and her ghost types. As with many of the Platinum Gym leaders, she's pretty easy other than her ace. In this case, it's her Mismagius, but Fantina leads with Duskull and I lead with Back Ribs. With a Dread Plate, a single feint attack almost knocks out the Duskull in one shot, but it survives and uses Future Sight. Fantina uses a Super Potion on the next turn, but then we high roll with feint attack and knock out the Duskull. Haunter is second, but since its only attacking moves are Shadow Claw and Sucker Punch, it's completely safe to switch to Spice. Then I just start switching between Yoda and Spice. The reason for this is because I want to be able to set up a substitute with Yoda before the Mismagius comes out. In order to do that safely, I need to make sure Haunter is completely out of PP and just going for struggles. This ends up being relatively efficient because Spice has natural cure as an ability, so every time Haunter puts her to sleep, we can just switch out and heal her status condition, forcing Haunter to use another Hypnosis. Once Haunter is completely out of PP and forced to struggle, I bring in Yoda and set up a substitute. Then I just spam substitute until Haunter recoils from struggles, bringing her into the red. This makes Fantina waste her final Super Potion. So, then finally, I kill the Haunter with a feint attack. Last is Mismagius, which is still pretty dangerous because feint attack won't kill in one shot. But the AI is pretty bad at dealing with substitute, and just tries to go for a Confuse Ray. So we get off a free feint attack. Then, on the next turn, Magical Leap breaks our sub, but a final feint attack kills Mismagius, winning us our third gym badge. On our way to Veilstone City, we can get all but one of our remaining encounters. On Route 209, I hatch a Smoochum and name her Ice Ice. Like Magby and Elekid, Smoochum is fairly strong and speedy for a baby, and stab Ice attacks will be nice. On Route 210, I hatch a Pichu, which is across the board just a worse version of Elekid. I name her Carrots and yeet her into the box. On Route 215, I hatch a Munchlax, definitely the best of the baby Pokemon that I can get. I mean, with the exception of her speed, Munchlax's stats are better than a lot of fully evolved Pokemon, so this is a pretty great encounter. I name her Fat. Fat also happens to have perfect attack IVs and a brave nature, so she's going to be our powerhouse going forward. On Route 214, I hatch an Azurill, and I name her Blue. She does have huge power, but she's still an Azurill, so into the box. And then at Valor Lakefront, I hatch an Igglybuff, easily the most useless of our babies. Except maybe Azurill. Maybe. I name her Aspirin, and she also gets dumped in the box. Now it's time for Maylene, and here I get to use a fun strategy with Boomer the Riolu. Riolu can learn the move Reversal, which is a fighting type move that becomes more powerful the lower your HP is. So, by entering this fight with Riolu pre-damaged at 1 HP, Riolu now has a 200 base power fighting type move. With Stab, that gets to 300 base power. So when holding a Fist Plate, that's enough to one-shot all three of Maylene's Pokemon, even her Meditite that resists fighting moves. Unfortunately, even with max speed EVs, Boomer doesn't outspeed Maylene's Lucario, so we'll have to use a different strategy for him. But hopefully Meditite and Machoke come out first. Maylene leads Meditite, and I first use Protect to avoid being just straight up killed on the first turn by Fake Out. Then I go for a Reversal, which does indeed knock out Meditite. Unfortunately, Maylene sends out Lucario second for some reason instead of Machoke. So now we need to switch out. I start by switching to Boss, who is immune to Lucario's Bone Rush thanks to Levitate. Then I Protect to scout out Lucario's move. It's Metal Claw, so that gives me a fairly safe switch into Baby Back Ribs. Then, on the next turn, I'm able to outspeed and one-shot the Lucario with a Flame Plate boosted Fire Punch. Third is Machoke, which is a bit of an issue since I obviously can't switch back into Boomer, but yet again, a hero is here to save us from the brink of disaster. I switch to Boss, who gets hit with a Rock Tomb. Then Machoke goes for a Focus Energy as we hit a hard Confusion. Then Boss tanks a Strength and finishes off the Machoke with a second Confusion, winning us another fairly straightforward gym badge. I promise that these gym battles will eventually get harder, but the only reason that they're going this well is because I'm putting a tremendous amount of thought into planning them out, and I'm also getting fairly fortunate with not being nailed by bad RNG. Anyways, with badge number 4, I can make my way to Pastoria City and hatch the final baby of the run. On Route 213, I hatch Togepi, the quintessential baby Pokemon. I name him Rosemary's. Compared to my other babies, Rosemary's is actually fairly defensively bulky, especially if we give him HP and defense EVs, so he'll actually be pretty good at providing Yawn and Wish support if we need it. Before fighting Crusher Wake, we have another rival fight, but his Pokemon aren't fully evolved yet, so they still aren't super difficult to deal with. Let's just jump to the fight against Crusher Wake. You'd think this wouldn't be too difficult since we have Jack to hit strong electric type attacks, but his defense is so bad that he will actually die to a critical hit priority Aqua Jet from Floatzel. Plus there's a Quagsire, so unless I want to risk some crits, Jack isn't the play here. I need to come up with another plan. However, I do start with Jack to easily knock out Crusher Wake's Gyarados with a single Thunderbolt. Then Quagsire comes out. I'm anticipating a Mud Shot, so the plan is to switch to Boss with Levitate, but I accidentally switched to Groot. That turns out to be okay because Quagsire goes for Rock Tomb instead of Mud Shot for some reason. I really don't know why. I know the AI does love speed control, but Rock Tomb and Mud Shot both lower speed, and Mud Shot would have done much more damage to Jack, so I guess the AI is just stupid. I switch to Boss, and for some reason Quagsire uses Rock Tomb again. This is bad because now Quagsire outspeeds and can hit a Water Pulse, which has a chance to confuse. Fortunately, it doesn't confuse Boss, so he's able to retaliate with a Grass Knot, knocking out the Quagsire in one shot. Floatzel is last, so I start with a Protect to ensure that he's going for Crunch. Then I switch to Riolu, who tanks the Crunch pretty handily. Then I use another Protect to verify it's using an Aqua Jet, so from here I switch to Fat for her debut battle. She tanks an Aqua Jet on the switch, and then also a Crunch on the next turn, which allows her to retaliate with a Thunder Punch, which manages to high roll and knock out the Floatzel in one shot, winning us yet another Deathless Gym Badge. From here, Platinum starts to pick up in difficulty relatively quickly. Most of our opponents now have fully evolved Pokemon, so especially against enemies with Pokemon that have strong physical attacks, most of our babies are susceptible to being one-shot by critical hits. For example, the Canalave City fight with our rival is the next major obstacle. Fortunately, now that we have access to Celestic Town and the HM for Surf, we get a few immensely useful items. The first is the Choice Specs, which I can get from the Glasses Man in Celestic Town. This increases damage from special attacking moves by 50% at the expense of locking us into a single move. Very useful for surf spams from Shark, for example. The second item we get access to is the Focus Sash, which is an item that when equipped lets your Pokemon survive a move that would otherwise knock it out from full health one time. After that, the Focus Sash is used up and it's lost, meaning that you can only use it once. However, in Sinnoh, Focus Sash are actually a farmable item, which I didn't know until this challenge. Once a day, a man on Route 221 will ask to see a Pokemon of a random level. If you show him a Pokemon with that specific level, he will give you a Black Belt. Then on the next day, he will give you an Expert Belt. And then on the third day, he will give you a Focus Sash. And then this cycle repeats, indefinitely. Meaning that if I consistently change the date on my DS, the man will eventually ask to see a Pokemon at a level that is equal to the level of one of my Pokemon, or near enough where I can level it up pretty quickly. And if I do this for long enough, I can get as many Focus Sashes as I want. This will be incredibly useful later in the challenge, because it means that I can safely switch in my babies without worrying about them getting one-shot by a critical hit. It does, however, come at the expense of no other item, and only works if my Pokemon is at full health, so it's not exactly a game-breaking strategy. But for now, let's get back to the fight with Old McD. He's got some speedy Pokemon, including a fairly bulky Heracross. Fortunately, Ice from the box is fast enough and strong enough to be able to knock out a lot of Barry's team with Stab Ice Beam and Stab Psychic, including Heracross. I just gotta train her up for her debut battle. Now, if you've ever seen any of my other videos, you'll know that me cutting to Twitch footage is never a good thing. But nothing that I can write in a script will be better than my live commentary. So let's just roll the clip.
What does this guy have? He doesn't have anything, right? He just gives me something, right? Ah, no!
I don't know if I've ever made that sound before. It certainly wasn't voluntary, but it does sum it all up pretty well. Let's watch it again in slow-mo, since it's a bit hard to see what happens when I speed up my DS. Sucker Punch is a very aptly named move, isn't it? Well, with that, I've lost my ringer for the old McD fight, so now I need to rely on Shark and Air Cutter to finish off Heracross, which would be fine if it wasn't for the fact that Air Cutter has a pesky accuracy of 95%. I can't afford to use a wide lens because I need the extra power from an Icicle Plate to kill the Staraptor with Ice Beam. So, there's a 5% chance to potentially lose the run here. All I can do is pray that sweet baby RNGesus is looking down on us kindly. Old McD leads Staraptor, so I lead Shark, who has been leveled up all the way to the level cap, so that she can just barely outspeed the Staraptor and knock it out with an Ice Beam. For some reason, Rapidash comes out next. He does outspeed us, but only uses Tail Whip, so a Surf knocks it out in one shot. Then Heracross comes out, so now is the moment of truth. Do we hit the 95% accurate Air Cutter? We do. Thank you, baby RNGesus. Fourth is Empoleon, so I switch to Fat, who tanks an Aerial Ace. Then I go for a Body Slam. This does just enough chip damage to Empoleon to ensure that a Thunder Punch on the next turn knocks it out. Had I gone for Thunder Punch first, this would have put Empoleon in Torrent range, which would have powered up his Water-type moves and put us in range of a critical hit Bubble Beam, so this order is safer. Last is Roserade, but even a critical hit won't kill us from this range, so we stay in and knock it out with a Body Slam, winning us the battle. After that, it's time to take on Byron, but Byron is always pretty easy and this challenge is no exception. Fist Plate boosted reversals from Riolu at 1 HP are enough to one-shot all three of Byron's Pokemon. I was pretty surprised that this always guarantees the kill on even Steelix, but I'm definitely not complaining about an easy gym badge. Especially because the next few fights coming up are really difficult. Fortunately, with 6 badges already obtained, there aren't that many mandatory fights left, and we still have a lot of spare babies sitting in the box doing nothing and begging to contribute to the team. Knowing that I'm only able to bring 6 babies to the Elite Four, I can start to consider sacking some of our more expendable infants during the harder fights. I mean, ideally, we don't sack any teammates, but you know the saying, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few babies. The Team Galactic Commander fights are scary, but manageable. We also have some very close calls with random trainers on the way to Snowpoint City, but we do ultimately make it there with everybody in one piece. If you're interested in seeing how it all went down though, you should check out the VODs on my Twitch channel. Actually, as a side note, would people be interested in a separate VOD channel where I upload my full Twitch streams? If so, let me know in the comments, and it's something that I can work on. Let's get to our fight with the 7th gym leader, who I don't remember the name of. Her Pokemon are really tough and hit hard, so we generally need to outspeed and one-shot them. She leads Sneasel, and I lead Jack, who is just fast enough to outspeed and knock it out with a Fist Plate boosted low kick. Piloswine comes out next, so I switch to Shark on the Earthquake. Then a single Surf is enough to one-shot the Piloswine. Third is Abomasnow, who sets up Hail, which means that any Focus Sash strats are out the window. The obvious candidate to take out Abomasnow is Back Ribs, but a critical hit Woodhammer is enough to kill him on the switch. So in order to get a safe switch, I need to make the tough call. It's time for Blue to come out of the box and take one for the team. I switch her in, and she actually does tank a Woodhammer thanks to some HP and defense EVs, but it doesn't really matter. On the next turn, another Woodhammer finishes her off. Rest well, Blue. This lets me safely bring in Back Ribs and avenge her death with a Fire Punch. Last is Candace's Scary Frostlass, but Fat with her Thick Fat ability walls her relatively well. So I switch her in as Frostlass uses a double team. Then Frostlass sets up another double team as I set up Sunny Day to get rid of the hail. Then Frostlass goes for another double team as I use Stockpile. And then Frostlass goes for a 4th double team as I set up another Stockpile. Then, and you're never gonna believe this, Frostlass uses a 5th double team. But Fat still manages to connect her stubby little fist into Frostlass's face, knocking her out in one shot. This is a great PSA about how unreliable double team strats are, by the way. But anyways, that's 7 badges, and it only cost us an Azuro. Not too bad. Next up is the final confrontation with Team Galactic and Cyrus. I've skipped all the Cyrus fights so far, not because they've been easy, but because the last one is significantly harder than all the others. But first is the sometimes easy, sometimes painstakingly difficult double battle against Mars and Jupiter. The difficulty tends to be determined by whether my rival's AI decides to cooperate or not. Mars and Jupiter lead their Bronzors, and I lead Baby Back Ribs, and Old McD leads Munchlax, which may be my best Pokemon, but is easily Old McD's worst. I start by taking out Mars's Bronzor with a Fire Punch, and then Jupiter's Bronzor sets up a Reflect. Munchlax hits a soft Body Slam, and then Mars brings out Perugly. I go for a Protect to see if Perugly will kill Old McD's useless Munchlax, which she does with a critical hit Slash. Better old McD's than mine, right? Then old McD brings out Heracross. So I switch to Yoda, who handily tanks a Slash, and then Heracross uses Brick Break, which not only breaks the Reflect, but also crits and one-shots the Perugly. An eye for an eye, as the old adage goes. Bronzor does a bit of damage with Extrasensory, then Mars brings out her Golbat. On the next turn, Golbat hits a very strong Air Cutter before Heracross brings Bronzor into the red with a close combat. Then Bronzor sets up another Reflect, and I set up a Substitute. Another Air Cutter from Golbat knocks out Heracross, an Extrasensory from Bronzor breaks my sub, and I get off a recoil-free Double Edge into Golbat thanks to Yoda's Rockhead ability. Old McD brings in Rapidash next, so I go for a Protect to let Rapidash do some damage. Golbat bites into my Protect, and then Rapidash finishes off the Bronzor with a Fire Blast. Now we're dealing with 2 Golbats, one of which has Giga Drain, so I gotta switch to Fat. Rapidash gets hit by a critical hit Poison Fang, and then uses Will-O-Wisp on the Golbat that has a completely special moveset. So a Sludge Bomb just knocks out the Rapidash. But then Staraptor comes out. Staraptor hits a takedown into Jupiter's Golbat on the next turn, which then retaliates with an Air Cutter that crits into Fat. Then Golbat hits a hard Sludge Bomb into Staraptor, and I finish off Mars's Golbat with a return, making this a 2-on-1. Then I go for a Protect, and Staraptor hits an Aerial Ace which leaves Golbat in the red, letting it retaliate with a Sludge Bomb, knocking out Staraptor. But then the burn damage finishes off the Golbat. So all that's left is Skunk Tank, as Barry brings out Empoleon. Skunk Tank uses Smoke Screen on Empoleon, who misses a Swagger, which would have been pretty risky to give to Skunk Tank, so I'm glad it missed. Then I hit return for a huge chunk of Skunk Tank's health. Citrus Berry recovers a little bit, but she's definitely dead to another one. On the next turn, Skunk Tank hits Empoleon with a Flamethrower, and then old McD does the single most badass thing I have ever seen any Pokemon AI do. He side swaggers Fat, giving her an attack boost, but also confusing her. However, the confusion gets healed by the Lumberry that Fat is holding, so Empoleon essentially just gave me a free Swords Dance. From here, Fat decimates Skunk Tank with a return. When this happened, I was totally stunned. I have never seen an AI do that, and it was awesome. I'm also pretty confident that the Swagger that Empoleon missed on his first turn was also going into Fat if it didn't miss, which would have been even cooler because we would have just killed the Skunk Tank in one shot. Now, I don't know if the AI somehow knew that Fat was holding a Lumberry, or if it would have risked that even if I wasn't holding a Lumberry, but either way, this has certainly cemented Old McD as the best rival in the franchise. Next up is the final confrontation with Cyrus. It took a while to plan this one because a lot of his Pokemon are very fast and hit very hard, but I was ready for this one, even if it meant sacking one of our sweet little angels. Cyrus leads Houndoom and I lead Boomer. At level 50, Boomer is just fast enough to outspeed Houndoom and knock him out with a reversal, though his held Quick Claw does end up activating anyways. Second is Crobat, which is super unideal because I was expecting Honchkrow to come in second, which also would have gone down to a reversal. Crobat obviously will not, nor will we outspeed it, so I switch to Yoda, who tanks a Cross Poison. Then Crobat goes for an Air Slash, which causes Yoda to flinch. And it's not great. On the next turn though, Crobat goes for a Toxic, but a Lumberry heals us, and I fortunately connect with a Rock Slide, which puts Crobat in the red. This causes Cyrus to use a full restore as I go for a Double Edge. Unfortunately, another Double Edge isn't enough for the kill, so I gotta risk another Rock Slide miss. Crobat hits an Air Slash, and then thankfully we connect with Rock Slide. That was probably Cyrus's second most problematic Pokemon. Next is Gyarados, but here we can finally fully take advantage of the farmed Focus Sashes. I switch to Jack-Jack, whose Focus Sash lets him survive an Earthquake. Then a Thunderbolt knocks out the Gyarados. Fourth is Weavile, easily Cyrus's scariest Pokemon since it's so fast and so strong. I need a safe switch into Nut, who is equipped with a Focus Sash and can kill the Weavile with Counter. If you notice the sprites in the bottom of the layout, you may have already guessed who we're going to sacrifice here. I switch Carrots in on a Fake Out. And then I just start using Endure. Endure makes it so that Carrots will hold on to Weavile's attacks with 1 HP. Like Protect, it will fail after progressive uses. The purpose for using Endure is to hopefully trigger Carrot's Static ability, which has a 30% chance to activate every time a Pokemon makes contact with her. The odds of it happening once out of the 3 turns are actually pretty in my favor, but it doesn't happen until the 4th turn when Weavile finally puts Carrots in her tiny coffin. Rest in peace, Carrots. Thanks to Static activating, it is now completely safe to bring in Boomer, who outspeeds and kills the Weavile with a reversal. This is ever so slightly better than using Nut, since if Weavile goes for Ice Punch and it freezes, we'd be in a lot of trouble. So thank you for your sacrifice, baby Carrots. All that's left is Honchkrow, who gets outsped and goes down to a reversal, winning us one of the hardest fights of the challenge. After this, I have to confront Giratina. Although there is a very fair argument to be made that Giratina is just a big old baby and therefore should be caught, I decide that it's just better to run, putting an end to Cyrus's ambiguous plans of world domination or whatever. From here, we have just a few more fights until the end of the game. First up is the final gym leader, Volkner. But before that, something pretty unfortunate happens against one of his gym trainers. Let me try and break it down as quickly as possible. In our fight against Ace Trainer Destiny, she leads Electabuzz and I lead Fat. On the very first turn, Electabuzz gets a critical hit Thunderbolt, and then Fat retaliates with an Earthquake that kills Electabuzz. But then her Raichu comes out, and thanks to the critical hit from Electabuzz, Fat is dead to a critical hit Thunderbolt from Raichu. So I can't afford to risk it and stay in here, because Fat is my only win condition against Volkner. So, anticipating a Thunderbolt, I switch to Jack, but then the Raichu goes for Dig, meaning that had I just stayed in and clicked Earthquake, this would have been over. But now I can't stay in with Jack, so I switch to Nut and tank a Dig. Then I go for a Mirror Coat, but Raichu uses Light Screen. So I go for another Mirror Coat, but then Raichu uses Thunder Wave. Both of those turns would have been great times to use Encore. So now I need to hit through Paralysis. For some reason, Raichu goes for Dig again, so Mirror Coat yet again does nothing. So I go for Reflect, get hit by Dig, and then get fully paralyzed. Then I go for Mirror Coat, but of course it just goes for Dig again, so I switch to Reflect, but again get fully paralyzed. If you can't tell from my video camera here, this Raichu is making me very angry. But that's not even the unfortunate thing. The unfortunate thing is that at this point I realize that I'm not recording this footage in my separate recording layout for YouTube videos. Normally when I stream through Streamlabs and record video for the YouTube video separately in OBS Studios so you don't have to look at my dumb ugly face the whole time. However, ever since I lost footage of the championship fight in my run of Pokemon X with fairy types, I've also used NVIDIA Shadowplay as a backup so that if I miss something important, I can capture the last 5 minutes of raw gameplay footage. I decide that this battle is pretty important since I might not make it out of it without losing a Pokemon, so I hit my hotkey to save the Shadowplay footage, which unbeknownst to me is also the default hotkey for reloading my ROM. So I just accidentally reset the ROM. Right in the middle of a battle that was very clearly not going my way, and easily could have ended in the death of a team member. Remember what I said about transparency? This is me trying to be transparent. I don't know if this reset means that this run is technically invalid, or that I should restart the run or something. That's up for you to decide. It's an unfortunate situation that was completely an accident, and I think everybody will have their own interpretation on what I should do when something like this happens. But after discussing it with Twitch chat, here's what we decided to do. First, I retrace my steps and get back to Ace Trainer Destiny. I lead Fat, and then on the first turn I throw a Pokeball at the Electabuzz and get hit by a Thunderbolt. On the next turn I go for an Earthquake. This more or less simulates a critical hit from Electabuzz. Then I do my best to retrace my actions. I switch to Jack as Raichu goes for Dig again for some reason. Then I switch to Nut as the Dig connects for some damage. Then I start clicking Mirror Coat. This time Raichu goes for Thunder Wave first. And then she sets up a Light Screen. And then she just goes for a Thunderbolt. So Mirror Coat just kills the Raichu. Why it went for Thunderbolt this time instead of Dig, I'll never know. But both Twitch chat and I felt that this was a good faith effort to replicate the events that unfolded. So hopefully this satisfies most viewers, but I know some people will still be irritated. For what it's worth, I'm probably the person that is most upset because I really hate when stuff like this happens. But I guess it's just a byproduct of human nature. So let's move on. Oh, but before we put this to rest, just in case it makes anyone feel better, against the very next trainer, an Electabuzz crits Fat with a Thunderbolt again. Only this time, it's a Magneton that comes out. So this time, I just have to risk the crit on Fat, which is essentially risking the entire run. Fortunately, Magneton does not get a critical hit, and Fat finishes it off with an Earthquake. This has not been a particularly fun set of games for me, if I'm being honest. But now it's finally time for Volkner, and I have a solid plan. I'm going to lead Groot into Volkner's Jolteon and Stun Spore it. This will force Jolteon to want to use Thunder Wave to gain back the speed advantage, so I'll switch to Gerber and Encore it into Thunder Wave. I'm also going to pre-poison Gerber so that he can't get fully paralyzed. Then I'll set up a Trick Room, which lets slow Pokemon move before fast Pokemon. And then I'll switch to Fat, who under Trick Room will be able to outspeed and one-shot Volkner's strongest Pokemon with Earthquake. I won't be able to beat all of his Pokemon before Trick Room runs out, but I'll be able to take out the ones that can do the most damage to Fat. Now when I explain my strategy in a video before the start of a battle, it's usually because the strategy ends up not working out at all. And this is of course what happens here. So where does it all go wrong? Well, I lead Badoo into Volkner's Jolteon. Jolteon uses Thunder Wave, which paralyzes Groot, but a Lumberry cures the paralysis. And then I miss a Stun Spore. So Jolteon hits an Iron Tail, and I miss another Stun Spore. I'm now starting to see that my plan had quite a few holes in it. Jolteon hits another Iron Tail as Groot finally connects with the Stun Spore. I go for a Protect to scout out Jolteon's move, but unfortunately he's just going for an Iron Tail since he now sees the kill. So it's not safe to switch to Gerber. Instead, I switch to Rosemary's, who gets lucky and dodges an Iron Tail. Then I use Wish as Jolteon goes for a Charge Beam, which of course boosts its special attack. I switch to Fat, and then thankfully Jolteon misses a Charge Beam, so the Wish was kind of a waste. On the next turn, despite already outspeeding Fat, Jolteon goes for a Thunder Wave, so our Lumberry heals the paralysis, and then an Earthquake takes out Jolteon. Second is Raichu, and this thing has Focus Blast. But I don't really have a safe switch, and Munchlax is bulky enough to tank one Focus Blast. So I just stay in and hope that Raichu doesn't crit. But then Raichu misses with Focus Blast, letting Fat get off an Earthquake for the one-shot. The RNG of this fight is insane, and it's only halfway over. Third is Electivire. I stay in and take almost half of my health from a Thunder Punch before retaliating with an Earthquake that just barely misses out on the KO. Then a Citrus Berry brings the Electivire out of healing range, so I switch to Yoda, who gets hit hard with a Thunder Punch. Time to risk a crit. Electivire uses Thunder Punch, but it doesn't crit, so we are able to take it out with a Double Edge. Last is Luxray, but things are still looking pretty bad. It looks like we need to make a sacrifice here. And since Groot really dropped the ball at the beginning of this battle, it's pretty clear that he's going to be the one making the sacrifice. He survives the switch in because Luxray goes for Thunder Fang, but it doesn't matter. We really need a safe switch into Nut. Rest well, Groot. You are an invaluable member of the team. Until you weren't. From here, I bring in Nut. Luxray uses Crunch, and then I retaliate with Counter. Only problem is that it is not enough to kill Luxray. This is actually really bad, because now Luxray will heal, and there's not much I can do about it. So I just click Encore as he heals. On the next turn, Luxray goes for Crunch, which Nut survives, and Crunch brings him back into the red. From here, I anticipate that he heals, so I switch to Fat, but Luxray just goes for another Crunch, which of course gets the defense drop. So now I'm dead to even a non-critical hit Crunch. So I switch to Rosemary's. Well, that sucks. Looks like I've got to make another sacrifice here. Based on my rough plan for the Elite Four, Nut is the most expendable here, so he's the one that I switch in. Rest in peace, Nut. Thank you for all your help. Unfortunately, since Gerber doesn't have any attacking moves, I have to bring in Fat and pray Luxray doesn't get a critical hit. So, Luxray hits a Thunder Fang, and Fat survives, knocking out Luxray and winning us by far the hardest gym badge of the run. Honestly, if Raichu had connected with Focus Miss, I'm pretty sure that would have been a wipe. After the battle, I just let Groot evolve into Roselia. Rest in peace, baby Groot. You're free now. With that, all that's left between our babies and becoming champions is Victory Road, the Elite Four, and the dreaded battle against Cynthia. Victory Road isn't too much of a problem, but there is one final battle against our rival. Fortunately, since it's literally the last fight before the Elite Four, we can afford to be very close to the level cap, which is quite a bit higher than Old McD's team. Still, his team is nothing to sneeze at. Old McD leads Staraptor, and I lead Shark. Shark is able to knock out the Staraptor with a single Ice Beam. Heracross comes out second, but this time I can give Shark a Wide Lens, which gives Air Cutter perfect accuracy, meaning we now knock out the Heracross in one shot. Third is Rapidash, but Shark is an absolute monster. With the level advantage, she's able to outspeed and one-shot the Rapidash with a Surf. Fourth is Snorlax, and now we've got a problem. Fortunately, this problem has an Igglybuff-shaped solution. We switch in Aspirin, who just barely doesn't survive a Body Slam. Rest well, little one. Thank you for your sacrifice. This lets me bring in Boomer, who has been pre-damaged to 1 HP, so Reversal easily takes out the Snorlax in one shot. Fifth is Empoleon, but Boomer outspeeds, so a Reversal kills it too. And last is Roserade, but even though he resists fighting type moves, Boomer is just too powerful and Roserade goes down, winning us the battle. With that out of the way, all that's left is to prepare our final team of 6 babies and level them up to the level cap of 59 to match Lucian's Gallade. Here's who made the cut. I also make sure to edge them until they're close to level 60, since according to my rule set, the level cap ends when the first battle against the Elite Four begins. So ideally, some of our Pokemon gain a level during the first few fights. I don't do this for easier challenges, but I'm literally using babies here. I'm gonna take any help I can get. Let's see if these 6 infants have what it takes to become champions of the Sinnoh League. First up is Aaron. Unsurprisingly, we'll be using back ribs to light little fires everywhere. With a flame plate attached, back ribs is able to outspeed and knock out every single one of Aaron's Pokemon. Well, except for Drapion, since Drapion isn't actually a bug type. Fortunately though, Drapion comes out last, so back ribs has already slaughtered all 4 of Aaron's other Pokemon. From here I switch to Rosemary's, who tanks a Cross Poison. Then Drapion uses another Cross Poison, I gain some HP back with a Citrus Berry, and I hit a Yawn. On the next turn, I tank 1 more Cross Poison, and then use Baton Pass to get a completely safe switch into Fat as Drapion falls asleep. Then Drapion snoozes for 2 turns as I hit it with 2 Earthquakes, winning us the fight. But if you thought that was easy, wait until you see what we do to Bertha. She leads Whiscash and I lead Rosemary's. Whiscash uses Sandstorm, and then we hit her with a Yawn. Then Rosemary's gets hit with an Earth Power as he uses another slow Baton Pass to get a free switch to Shark, although Earth Power wouldn't have actually done damage anyways. With Whiscash fast asleep, Shark sets up an Agility, which is needed to outspeed Bertha's Glysaur. Then Shark takes out Whiscash with 2 Surfs as she just snoozes for a few more turns. From here, it's what you'd expect. All of Bertha's Pokemon have terrible special defense and are weak to Water-type moves, so they go down to a Surf apiece. It's really funny to watch Shark with that huge smile on its back, just devastating Bertha's massive, fully evolved Pokemon. With that, we're halfway through the Elite Four and we haven't even broken a sweat. Third is Flint and his fire types, so it's time for another Shark sweep. Sort of. She's not exactly the fastest or the strongest Pokemon, so she will need a little bit of setup here. Fortunately, she also has decent special defense, so Flint's Houndoom isn't too threatening. I start with an Agility so that I can outspeed all of Flint's Pokemon waiting in the back, and then Houndoom goes for a Sunny Day. Waste of a turn, buddy, because on the next turn I set up a Rain Dance and then get hit by a fairly hard Dark Pulse. But from here, rain-boosted Surfs knock out most of Flint's Pokemon. We only have Rain for 4 turns, so there will be 1 Pokemon that we have to take care of without Rain. Fortunately, his most intimidating Pokemon come out first, since Infernape knows Thunder Punch and Magmortar knows Thunderbolt. Flareon comes out 4th, which is also fortunate, because he's the only one of Flint's remaining Pokemon that we wouldn't be able to one-shot with a Surf if Rain wasn't up. Rapidash comes out as the rain stops, but a Surf is still enough to knock it out, netting us another easy victory. But last is Lucian, and our plan is a little shakier here, since it relies on his Mr. Mime trying to set up screens. If he doesn't and instead goes for an attack, things could get a little scary. I lead Gerber into Lucian's Mr. Mime, and then Mr. Mime sets up a Reflect. Perfect, because Gerber locks Mr. Mime into Reflect with Encore. This means that we're completely free to set up 2 Meditates, which boost our attack. Then I use Trick Room to make slow Pokemon outspeed fast Pokemon for 5 turns. Then I use Baton Pass to transfer the attack boost from Meditite to Fat. Conveniently, this is timed perfectly for Mr. Mime's Reflect to wear off, so I kill Mr. Mime with a Return. Since we spent a turn Baton Passing, we only have 2 more turns of Trick Room to play with, but fortunately, Lucian brings out his most problematic Pokemon first, a Gallade with Drain Punch that goes down to a Return, and an Alakazam with Focus Miss that also goes down to a Return. After that, Trick Room expires and Espeon comes out. But he's not very threatening to Fat, who has a really solid special defense stat, especially for a baby. After tanking a Psychic, another Return knocks out Espeon. Last is Bronzong, but it's got very little to hit Fat with. It just goes for Calm Mind, so a Fire Punch knocks out the Bronzong in one shot. And with that, we've won the battle and defeated the Elite Four. But the Elite Four are nothing compared to Cynthia. I mean, how are a bunch of silly little babies going to take down her freaking Garchomp? I'll tell you how. With teamwork. And insanely broken Baton Pass strats. But mainly teamwork. After making our final preparations, we enter Cynthia's chamber. The iconic music starts, and our final battle begins. Cynthia leads Spiritomb, and I lead Back Ribs, who's holding a Focus Sash. This Focus Sash ensures that I'll be able to get off 2 hits on this Spiritomb, even if the thing crits. But I mean, come on, the Spiritomb never crits, right? So I start using Captivate, which harshly drops her special attack. Thanks to the drop, Spiritomb doesn't do much damage with her attacks, so I'm able to get off 2 more Captivates, dropping her special attack all the way down to -6. But after the 3rd Captivate, Spiritomb does land a crit, knocking out sweet Baby Back Ribs. But that was always the plan. We need a safe switch to Rosemary's, so Baby Back was always going to go down there. Rest well, you beautiful, weird duck thing. Rosemary's comes out and first gets hit with a Dark Pulse, which thankfully doesn't crit or flinch, so we're able to safely set up a substitute. Then Rosemary's goes for a Yawn as the substitute absorbs the damage from a Dark Pulse. After tanking another Dark Pulse from Spiritomb, Rosemary's uses a slow Baton Pass to transfer her sub over to Gerber, and then Spiritomb falls asleep. She continues to stay asleep as Gerber sets up 2 Meditates. Then I use Baton Pass to transfer the attack boost from Gerber to Jack as Spiritomb just stays asleep. We go for a Thunder Punch, which does just over half health, as Spiritomb just continues to snooze through her slow demise. The substitute means that we probably didn't need this good of sleep luck, but hey, I'll take it. Consider it karma for the absolute nonsense that was the final battle in my Diamond Fire-type only run. Anyways, another Thunder Punch takes out Spiritomb. Then Cynthia's mighty Garchomp comes out, but guess who's able to outspeed and knock it out with an Ice Punch? That's right, Garchomp, feel the pain of our icy toddler-sized fist. Next is Lucario, but we outspeed and kill it with a low kick. Fourth is Togekiss, but we punch that thing right in the face with the Thunder Punch, and it too goes down. Fifth is Milotic. Meet Jack's fist. And then suddenly, we've gotten to Cynthia's last Pokemon, her Roserade. But it too falls to the icy power of Jack's tiny baby fist. And with that, we've beaten Pokemon Platinum with nothing but a team of babies. It took a lot of planning, and definitely plenty of sacrifice, but other than Volkner, I was actually surprised by how smoothly everything went. Despite being babies, I still had access to a few fairly solid Pokemon, and the diversity of all of our babies made it so that I had a lot of different tools at my disposal. Honestly, this was by far my favorite challenge run so far. I've said this before, but as fun as it is to do monotype challenges, it's so much more fun to have access to different types of Pokemon that can be used to develop more complex strategies. It was so satisfying to brainstorm and come up with how to tackle each major battle with nothing but a bunch of weak babies. So hopefully you enjoyed watching the video at least half as much as I enjoyed making it. Either way, thanks so much for watching and for all your continued support. If you enjoyed watching, it'd be great if you could like the video and subscribe. Or not, I don't know. But I do know that you should follow me on Twitter and Twitch to keep up with streams of my future challenges, and you should also join the Flagon HG community Discord, where you can discuss Nuzlocking and make recommendations for future challenges. The link is in the description. Stay tuned for more Nuzlocke videos, and until then, remember to always play around the critical hit.